to the Curate for Women Network. Today we are with the most amazing Sevetri Wilson. Hello, Sevetri.
Hello, how are you?
Good. Thank you so much for telling me yes.
Yes, well, welcome to my home. Happy to be here with you.
Yeah, I love this home. I love this home. I want to make this my surrogate home when I am in New Orleans.
Stop by anytime.
It is so comfy. Okay, so you've done a lot of work as Sevetri Wilson, and now you are married.
Yes.
So are you going to take on your husband's last name and give your name back to your ancestors? Are you hyphenating? What are we doing?
So I am definitely not giving my name back to my ancestors. It's one that has stayed with me and tried and true all of my life. However, I will bring over the husband's last name as well.
Okay, so then you will be Sevetri Wilson Taylor.
Yes.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And it is such a pleasure to be here with you, Mrs. Taylor. Mrs. Wow, does that feel weird for you?
Oh, you know what? I think hearing it feels weird, but
Yeah.
I think what feels odder is saying, oh, my husband.
Oh yeah, but it's so funny because to me it sounds like my man. Right. when I was first married, I would always refer to Ross as like my husband is doing such and such, and my friends was like, girl, we know Ross.
Right? Ross, that's Ross.
Stop calling him your husband. We know that's your husband. It does feel weird, but it does feel good at the same time.
Yes.
It's like this other sense of security. So you've built so much in such a small amount of time, and when I hear the word resilient, naturally I think of you. So what comes to mind when you hear the word resilient?
I just think of someone or a community or whomever that just won't be denied. And as myself, when I think about myself as being resilient, there's a lot of things that have come my way, highs, lows, ups, downs, and I've always gotten back up and moved forward. And so that idea of resiliency and being resilient is in like my DNA, and I think it's in the DNA in our communities and so many people.
Yeah.
And I know people get upset, they be like, oh, I'm tired of being resilient.
Yeah.
And it's like, you could be tired, however, the ability to be resilient is still a characteristic that is important.
Yeah, and watching how you've grown like over the years, I'm like, yeah, every time I hear this word, I think about you. And you founded not one, but two multi-million-dollar companies.
Yes.
Solid Ground Innovation.
Yes.
And Resilia.
Yes.
Okay, so let's talk about those and tell me the difference between the two.
Yes.
Yeah.
So Solid Ground Innovations, I always say it's kind of like my baby of the two, because I started it when I was very young. I was basically 22 years old, right? And I was like, I have an idea or even a belief that I can build something, right? Utilizing the little bit of expertise I had gained in college and graduation and graduating to create this company that will allow me to service and be of service to other people, right? And so Solid Ground Innovations is a management consultancy agency in which we primarily work with government entities now, but historically had worked with corporations, foundations, nonprofits, executing against their mission. And that's something that I have just historically done very well, helping people execute. And SGI was all about doing that in a professional services way. Resilia is different in the sense that it's a tech company. And so I was building SGI, but I'm seeing technology disrupt everything around me. So I'm thinking, okay, either I'm going to be a disruptor or I'm going to get disrupted. I have no tech background though.
Right.
And here I am thinking about launching and starting a tech company. But I've always focused on what I do best. And I've been just present enough, and I understood what I did not know, right? And I knew that I needed to be able to source and bring together people who did what I didn't do. And Resilia launched essentially as a vertical SaaS, which is software as a service. And we productized the services that we were doing with SGI for like nonprofits and foundations and corporations, and now deliver it through a software solution. And so very much two different businesses types, whereas one is professional services and one is technology driven, but both were kind of built out of just a vision that I had, right, to really execute against some ideas that I believe not only did I believe strongly in, but I believe could help move the needle in some form or fashion.
Yeah, both of these companies definitely are developed from the same heart.
Yeah.
Same mind. So most people would think of you as a unicorn in this space, in the tech world, because you have no background in tech.
Right.
Your degree is not even in that, right?
No.
What is your educational background?
So I went to school for mass communication, so journalism and history.
Yeah.
And so I literally have no background in tech, computer science. I don't know how to code, any of that.
Right. Okay, so no coding background, no tech background, no co-founder, and your businesses mostly reside still in New Orleans, correct?
Yes. So when the pandemic happened with Resilia, we kept our office here in New Orleans. We kept our office in New York, but now we actually have team members that are in over 29 different cities across the U.S. Because we created a hybrid model.
Okay.
And so that meant that people could work essentially from anywhere.
Yeah.
And so a lot of our team members are distributed, across the country. And we also have a engineering pod in Mexico as well.
You're still the CEO of both of your companies?
Yes.
Do you plan on hiring a CEO for this? Or you're like, no, these are my babies. We're gonna have to stick with it.
So, I definitely think that in the future down the road, maybe near future, maybe long-term future, we'll see. I will bring someone in to take over some of the day-to-day so that I can get back to the things that I love most.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to be really important for me as well as for the next chapter of my life, right? I have given so much to both of my companies that at some point there's an inflection mark where you're thinking like, okay, what's next? And how much of you needs to truly be there day to day to get things done.
Yeah.
And so I am thinking about that and reflecting on just the past, 15 years of building and launching companies.
With the tech company, obviously you need the money to be able to do this, that you're not actually funding yourself.
Yes.
And so how do you prepare for your VC pitches? Did you have a mentor in this space? Like, how did you first of all, where did the courage come from to say like, this is a need, I'm going to do it, versus like wanting to partner with somebody and say, hey, can you do this for my company?
So I don't necessarily know if there was like courage. I've always been I have an idea. I wonder what it will take to do it, right? And so I started looking around and saying, okay, these are the resources I do have to be able to accomplish this thing, but these are all the things that I need and I do not have.
Right.
And then I think about strategically, how do I get them?
Yeah.
Right? How am I able to align and connect the dots in a way that allows me to accomplish this next thing or to do this next thing?
Yeah.
And so I did not have a mentor in tech or didn't even come from the tech ecosystem at all. And so I really was like a fish out of water. However, I had a friend of mine who did kind of grow up and went to college in that ecosystem. Shout out to Anthony Kimball. And he introduced me to a guy in San Francisco who he had went to Stanford with, who was a software engineer. And I brought the idea and the vision for Resilia. It wasn't actually even named that then. It was called Exit Me Now. To this guy, and he helped me create what would be like the wireframes and specifications deck, which is basically like the business plan for what Resilia would become. And so then I brought that back to Louisiana, and I was like, okay, now I need someone to build it because I'm not a software developer. I don't know how to code. And I began to put together a team and a dev shop, hired a dev shop to help me build the first iteration of what will become the company.
So we use Resilia, and it is amazing.
Thank you.
It actually feels like you have your personal hands in it. And so if y'all need that, if you are wanting to start a nonprofit, check out Resilia. And also, y'all have heard enough about her professional background. You know that she's amazing. You know that she's a superhero. If you don't, there's so many platforms for you to do your research about that. But we're going to switch gears for a little bit. I have read and I've heard you speak about your mom quite often, and how you were working so hard to build a life for her that she wasn't able to build for herself, but that she deserved so much.
Right.
And so she passed. When she passed, how did you get back to your passion? Like, how did you figure out, like, okay, now what am I building for?
Yeah. So I understood that although I no longer was building to kind of help my mother and to create the life that I felt that she deserved, right, and be able to offer her that, I did understand that I was going to have to like move forward and begin what will become like my career. However, I also knew that I wanted to build something where people could come in and do things that they love and that they were passionate about every day. And so it's like, how do you do good and do well, right? And that was something that was really important to me, building both of my companies, but definitely as we began to build Resilia, because I knew the scale of the company would be so much larger and so much greater, and that I would have to, will begin to hire and employ so many more people than what I did with SGI. And so it was definitely always that foundation of how do I employ my abilities and my talents to then deploy something into the world that allows people to do things that they are passionate about, make good money, have a career, and work inside of a company that they feel good about. And so that was definitely just the foundation and the vision for what I knew I needed to do and wanted to do.
So you grew up in Hammond, Louisiana, a very small town.
The other H-town.
I've never heard that. The other H.
That might just be a Hammond thing. Don't come for me, Houston. Don't come for me.
That is so funny. But Hammond is such a cute city. Like, it's such a cute town. If most people who have been there, they know that. And so you have a very big family.
Yes.
When your mom passed away, who stepped into that role for you?
So it was definitely my aunts, my siblings stepped up. I remember my brother saying, yeah, you know, Mom said I need to take care of you or look out for you, so you know I'm going to do that. That's my brother Sean, who's very like monotone. Like he's no gray area, right? He's black or white, right? And he was like, yeah, Mom said I need to look out for you, so I'm here to do that. You know?
Good.
But I have such a large family and was raised alongside my cousins. As if they were also my siblings. And so they definitely stepped up and stepped in.
I know that it cannot be easy losing a parent, obviously, and then having such a big family kind of help with that. Do you consider yourself to be like a emotional person, or are you pretty just?
It depends. I feel like, I'm more emotional if I'm speaking to things related to like my mother or like my family. And probably the opposite when I'm talking about like business and like work. But you know, I'm not a killer, but don't push me. That's how I feel about emotions.
I'm not a killer, but don't push me. Velvet glove, iron fist.
Yes.
Okay. So your mom how long has it been since she's gone?
So, it's been now over 10 years.
Okay.
Although it feels like yesterday, you know, in a relationship to time, but it's been now over 10 years.
Do you still weep for her often? Like, do you still cry for her often?
Well, like during my wedding, I did. And also like during the process of planning, it could be like sad, right? Because there are moments that you hold, and people hold sacred for their mother, and my mother wasn't there. And so I did a lot of things like leading up to and then during the wedding that were in memory of my mother.
How did you honor her in those moments?
A couple different ways. You know, we left space for her at the cathedral. My husband gave me a token that I was able to put in my bouquet that had her photo on it, along with my dad and my grandmother, who are also no longer with us. During the wedding, instead of having a mother, a daughter or father dance, I actually played one of her favorite songs, which became our song. And so there were
Which
definitely
is?
moments. So it's called "I'll Take You There" by the Staple Singers. So it's a song that we used to always sing.
I love it. Okay. So, and your father died when you were much younger.
Yes.
How old were you when he passed away?
So I was about 6 going on 7 when
Okay.
my father passed away.
And so I wanted to, I was going to ask you, how did you know that, even one, that you had the strength to even be an entrepreneur? Because this is not for the faint at heart, obviously. And definitely not at the scale in which you were doing it.
Right.
But then I think I learned, and I could be wrong, your dad was an entrepreneur, wasn't he?
Yes, so he was
Okay.
also an entrepreneur, business owner. He owned a cement company and had other endeavors and ventures. And so I always say that I got my business sense from my dad, and I hope that I have gotten my heart and just my ability to have empathy for people from my mother.
So with your dad dying at that age, do you remember him at all?
I do, and I also remember the time in which I found out. I remember the place where I was, which I was in Syracuse at my aunt's house. I remember flying back to his funeral. It was my first time ever on a plane. And I remember the 2 individuals, because back then, and maybe still today, they sit people with you. If you're flying, if you're a child and you're flying by yourself, they'll sit people with you. I remember the little older white couple who sat next to me as my airplane chaperones. And so I do have a pretty distinct memory of that time.
Yeah, well, that's interesting that your first flight happened back to your dad's funeral. When you take flights now, do you think about that?
I don't. Every once in a while, I might pop in my mind, but thankfully, that was never a trauma for me. And maybe I just never thought about it, and it could have been, and it just wasn't. But
Well, it could be
I travel way too much. I was like, Lord, take me home.
Well, it could be this nostalgia,
Yes,
right?
yes.
I don't remember ever meeting my grandmother. Well, I don't at all, because she was 2 when I passed away. But I still feel her so close to me because she was so close to my dad.
Yes.
And I'm very close to my dad, and so he has kept her legacy alive for such a really long time. My grandmother died in a house fire, and so the only part that was left of her house was the fireplace.
Oh, wow.
And my dad turned it into a barbecue pit. And he's he would cook food out of the,
That's amazing.
And so this is so random, but whenever I see fireplaces or whenever you light them, I instantly think about my grandmother. So no, definitely not trauma related.
Yes.
But a comforting feeling.
Right. A positive memory. Yeah.
So, first generation college student, what did that feel like for you when you were going into that space? You're in college, and there's so many fun stories to share. There's so many things happening. When you were coming back home and talking about that, what was that? I mean, how did your family receive that from you? Were they like, oh girl, I don't care? Or were they thinking oh my gosh, this is so cool?
Well, first of all, I think my first summer in going into my freshman year, I had made so many friends that at first I was coming back every weekend. I was like, I'm going home.
Yeah.
And then after the first few weeks, I was like, oh, I'm not even going back home. So I stopped actually going home very frequently because I kind of embraced the entire college scene. I was involved in organizations. And I think people were just happy for me. But I also feel that although I'm a first generation college student and my siblings were as well, outside of the ones that went to the military, it was exciting, but it was also this is what you're supposed to do.
Right.
And so it wasn't I don't know, it was a different type of approach than maybe some others may have received from their families. But I always had that sense from my family, oh yeah, this is what you're supposed to do. You know?
When you went to college, did you have the thought that I'm gonna go to college, I'm gonna graduate, I'm gonna do my career, and then I'm gonna get married? Did you always know that you were gonna be married? Because we're gonna swing back around to that question, because when I asked you to do this, you weren't even engaged.
Yes.
And so I feel like you got engaged and then you got married real quick, because you and
we
him,
did.
Y'all knew.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking about that the other day, because I was like, oh wow, I saw a photo from our engagement in Italy, And I was like, oh, we haven't even celebrated our year anniversary of our engagement, and we already married. So I was like, okay, yeah, that was definitely, I think it was like 8 months or 9 months from the time we got engaged until we got married. But it was definitely fast.
I know. So when you got to college and you were very determined, obviously.
Yes.
Were you even thinking about marriage when you were in school?
So, I mean, I think everybody played MASH, right? You're like, I'm gonna be in a mansion with my husband, I'm gonna be in an apartment, a shack, a house. Right? So I think if you were raised in the South,
you definitely
you
played
were
MASH.
thinking about like, what is my life gonna look like,
Yeah.
right? And you were thinking, and shoot, back then you're like, oh, I'm surely gonna go off to college and I'll be married by 26 or 27, right? And then life would have other plans, and you would go and do other things. But I always had a sense that I never aspired to be married.
Yeah.
Right. And so I never aspired to have a wedding and all of those things. But I was always open to it.
Yeah. I think too, people watching you in this space and like watching you grow, I think people were always, I think there was probably always a thought of like, who would she marry at this point? Like, if you didn't meet him in college.
That's always the hard part.
I know. And so, okay,
They don't teach black women that though.
No.
Baby, we about them the degrees. You
Yes,
hear me?
for sure. It's like, honestly, the thought of even finding your husband in college for black women sometimes is bogus. Because it's like, no, I didn't come here for that. And my mom really would be like, girl, you did not go to school for that.
You are not there to be underneath no little boy. Like, that's
Get out
real.
that boy's face.
That's definitely, you need to be, your head needs to be in the books, right?
Yes, and get out his face, all right? And it's so funny because I play MASH for sure. Never thought that I would be married.
See?
It's not something that I aspired to be. It is not something that I sought after for sure. And I honestly never thought that anybody would ask me to marry them.
Look at us now.
Look at us now. So how did you meet Austin?
So we actually met through a mutual friend, Ronald, at Jazz Fest weekend. The second weekend in Jazz Fest, that's Saturday, and we met at someone's crawfish bowl. And we were introduced, and originally we were introduced because they felt like, oh, this is a great person you should know. She may be able to help out with, the high school. So my husband runs a all boys Catholic high school.
St.
Og. And so I know the introduction from his former alum, or his alum, was basically like, oh, hey, she's a possible like donor for the school. You need to like, connect with her. But he had other plans.
He was probably thinking like, all right, donor, cool.
Right.
So what were your thoughts when you first met him?
So my thoughts, and he will tell you that I tried to curve him, which I definitely did, because anytime, I did. It's like a whole story, but
you were like,
yeah. I mean, being in business and being a woman in business, anytime someone tries to connect me on something that feels more business driven, if someone tries to like then switch it, I'm like,
yeah, because I'm sure that happens to you a lot.
Often. That people be like, oh, let's go talk about some work. But I will say, to his credit, from day one, he switched it, right?
Yeah.
So although our mutual friend was like, oh, maybe this could be like some work stuff, he immediately was like, oh, no. Like, I'm trying to take you to dinner.
I hear all the time that like men know instantly when they've met their wife.
Yes.
You think that was that moment for him? He was like, this is not a, thank you, though, but no.
Well, he definitely was like fast and furious. So I would say
you were married and you were engaged and married within 8 months.
Yes, I was.
And so how long did you know him before you were engaged?
Since April 2019.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so we had known each other for a while before we got engaged, for sure.
Were you dating since 2019?
We were, although we had broken up, went our separate ways. He'll say, because I wasn't ready. He said I wasn't ready. I was playing. Yeah. He was ready to start his family and his life, and I was not. So that's what he will say. Then we reconnected.
Did you remind him that you were introduced to me as somebody that I was supposed to be donating?
He didn't even hear that point.
Yeah, don't pressure me. Okay, no, I'm kidding. So y'all started dating in 2019.
Yep.
You broke up because you weren't ready.
Yep, that's his story. He's sticking to it.
Okay, so what's your story? Were you ready?
I mean, I was a little wobbly. I'll say that because I was so focused on my work and my company and my business, so much going on. And I will say, although I've always been open to marriage, I've always, and I think probably a lot of women in business will say this, I've always been in a position where I never wanted my personal life to interfere with my professional and my business life.
Did y'all ever
it was like a
did
transition.
y'all ever muddy those waters a little bit?
I don't think we did. I think that I had to kind of like be okay to face a very like scary moment where your life is going to change, right? And you're going to have to de-emphasize what a life that has 100% kind of been focused on like work and building businesses
and being totally independent.
Yes.
So I remember I had my very first Curate conference. And you told me yes, and I was like, yes. And then I want to say the night before the conference, you were like falling sick.
Oh man.
And I was like,
came through like a champ.
Oh, he definitely came through. But also, you definitely came through for me. I was like, and I wasn't expecting it. I had literally got to a place where I was like, okay, God, you know, whatever these women need, they're going to get it today at this conference.
And they would have, with or without me, because you delivered a great conference.
Oh, thank you. But but honestly, I was like, the people going to think I'm a fraud. Okay, I got Sevetri's face plastered all over my marketing. And a lot of people were excited to come and see you, and they would probably be like, girl, you really sold us tickets. You sold us wooden nickels is what you did. But you were like, it's okay, it's a stomach bug. And I was like, man, she's still going to come with a stomach bug. And so then when you pulled up, you had this guy behind you. And then I was like, hold up, me and Sevetri we're not close friends on Instagram. And you ain't even done a soft launch with this man. And then, you didn't even make him sit in the car.
He was right there.
Behind you. Okay, so then some other women who were doing the conference with us, right next to Shereen, I'm looking at them like, y'all know this man? Is this her man? Because he's in here like a bodyguard.
Yes.
Which, I was like, man, this is so cool because I don't think I've ever seen that side of you, right? I've always seen you in a very professional space, in which you were professional when you came.
Yes.
But it felt very much so like he's here for my safety. He's here to make sure that I'm good. And so did you have any reserve about bringing him and then not making him stay back in the car?
So, no, I feel like there's two sides of it, right? I think there is you could be with someone and not post them on social media and y'all could be, riding tight every single day, right? And so at that point, that's where we were for sure. So I didn't have any qualms about bringing him out.
Any soft launches before that?
Before we got engaged?
No, I've seen him before.
Okay, yeah. I was gonna say he's been around.
I think I've seen, but I still was getting glimpse of it. I think I fully understood who he was when I saw him at the conference.
Right.
But after that, that's when I started to see him more. But then I probably just started paying attention.
Right. Yeah. And I definitely kind of kept him off of social for a very long time.
Yeah. Because you have a male best friend, right?
I do. I have a couple male best friends, but
one in which used to accompany you to almost everything. Izzy.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I had to retire Izzy, baby.
But did anybody think that Izzy was your man?
I don't know, but I don't think so. And then also, Izzy and I was so just close friends and people knew that. But also, we also had the same last name. So sometimes people thought we were cousins.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I thought you were about to say people thought
they thought we were cousins because we had the same last name too. He gonna love this shout out in this podcast. He's like, that's me. It's
okay. After this, we're gonna do a toast for you, Izzy. It's cool. I don't mind shouting him out because he's really supportive of all these things that you have going on.
Izzy has been at the crawfish ball giving his infamous toast.
Giving his infamous toast to everybody.
Yes.
I'm going to revert back a little bit to the career side of this, but being that you have no background in this, your education is not tech savvy, it's not all these things, but you're going out, you're raising venture capital. I don't know what I was about to say just now. You're going out, you're raising venture capital, you're doing all these things. Do you ever feel like an imposter in this space? I mean, clearly we know now that you are not. But do you ever feel like an imposter in that space?
I mean, I think that as Black people move through the world, sometimes people want to make you feel that way, right? As if they have all the knowledge and, you know, you don't really know what you're talking about. But I don't feel that today as much as when I first started in tech. And to be honest, when I think about like the idea of imposter syndrome, at the end of the day, we all are faking it till we make it until we make it. Right? Because everybody starts generally at ground zero where you have to learn to become an expert in anything, right? And so the fact that anybody would be an imposter who's trying to like learn a craft is just kind of something that people have put into the heads of people who are probably the real imposters, right? So
I was just about to say, so like, at what point do you think that people become actual imposters? Because I do believe that everybody aspires to be something.
Right.
And like you said, like you have to position yourself in a place where people have to take you serious or they won't.
Yes.
And so that's the fake it until you make it part. When do you think that people become like full on imposters?
So to me, it's like when you're not actually doing anything. You're not even working towards the craft for real, but you're putting like a front that you are maybe. But I think anyone that's actively working towards their craft and working towards their expertise, I'm very hard pressed to be like, oh, that person is an imposter. It's people who know that they are selling something that they literally know nothing about, right?
Especially in a world where podcasts are so popular. Master classes and people wanting to be like these influencers. And I'm not hard pressed to call people imposters, right? Because I'm definitely in a new space of building the platform that I'm building right now.
Absolutely.
But I meet so many people who want to come onto here just to talk about their business. And so for me, I'm like, well, it's not a platform for your business. It's a platform for women who work, but I want to humanize this woman that's actually doing the work. And so when we get to that part of the conversation, then it's like, all right, well, what do you do? And then you can tell me what you do, but then we can't go any further beyond that, right? And so it's like, I don't want to go beneath the surface of you.
It's true. And it's also, can you teach back what you do, right, to someone else? And I think those are like the key things when people are trying to set apart what they do. And then also, I don't know why people are trying to like skip the apprenticeship phase. It's like, it's okay to be an apprentice, right? It's okay to say, I'm learning this. I'm not an expert in it yet, but I'm learning this and I'm going to get there. People want to go from 0 to 100. And then that's what blurs the lines between what you can do and what you actually do, and can make people look more like an imposter because they just don't even want to go through the journey of becoming this thing. They just want to become. They don't want the journey of becoming.
And now, as an expert in your field, because you've written multiple best-selling author. Shout out to that. That's super cool. But now that you are here, right? Wouldn't you say to aspiring entrepreneurs and anyone aspiring to be what you're doing, wouldn't you say that apprenticeship is like the safest place to be when you're starting?
100%. So I always say this about me starting my first company. I say this, and then also a friend of mine, Cleveland Spears, who has a consultancy agency as well, he says the same thing. He's like, we could do it again. We actually would have went into an agency and learned first. Because we had to make so many errors, right? We had to learn by doing, and then failure, when you've never done it before, you're trying to like learn by doing yourself. You just fail more often. And there's a lot more costly mistakes you learn along the way. Now, you absolutely can do it, but we knew that, man, had we spent like 2 years in the agency, we would have skipped a lot of these bombs that we stepped on, all these landmines that we stepped on. We probably could have skipped a couple of them along the way had we been apprentice before.
So I actually have a question in here, which is hilarious that you said that, because I was going to ask you, what are some like big money mistakes that you've made, and how have you learned from that?
Oh man, so many. Mishiring is probably the biggest one, I would say, because like mishiring, it just leads to so many like negative things. And very costly to standpoint of like you're bringing on someone, which is why I always tell like entrepreneurs and business people, don't fall in love with like a candidate. And you might be interviewing a person, you're not asking the right questions because you just like, oh, you just know that this person's going to come in, they're going to be able to help you so tremendously with your company, they're going to help you be able to grow it, etc. And they come in and don't do any of that. And so I always tell people like to have others interview the person, so that you're not just going in with just like one feedback and that's your own, right?
Yeah.
And so
do you still interview people for your company?
I do, but I'm the last interview.
So
technically by the last interview, if you don't make it past me, I mean, it must have just been bad. Because
your people who are interviewing before, they know not to even play with you at that point. Yeah.
So I was like, if you've made it through everybody and
you
get to
pretty
me,
much got the job.
You got the job.
Yeah.
And so it's more of a formality. And I always tell people, oh, this isn't really an interview, a formal interview, it's a conversation.
Yeah.
And so, and there have been people who, after that interview, I respect off my team, I said, absolutely not.
And how did they get past you?
Okay,
so what kind of boss are you? What kind of boss are you? Are you really
like you to get to me? Wasting my time.
Don't waste my time. Yeah. So what kind of boss are you? Are you like, please don't do that again? You know,
no,
when
I hire smart people so they can tell me what to do.
Yeah.
And at the event where I have to come in and like take over, I was like, man,
I don't want to do this.
Yeah, I'm just more like disappointed about, you know, how we got to this point.
Do you fuss at them, or are you like?
I'm not a fusser. I'm more of a, we didn't get it right, but we got to get it right next time.
Okay, and then you come home. Now you got a husband, so now you can come home and you can be like, can you believe? Okay, so too, before you were married, who did you do that with?
Probably my mentors.
Yeah.
People like that, advisors, be like, oh, and sometimes I always take a step back and I always think like, oh, am I overreactive or I'm thinking about something in the wrong way? And so sometimes I do like to present a situation so that I can get feedback and be like, what do you think about this? Would you have reacted like this, right?
Yeah.
And so I always try to check myself in that aspect.
Okay, so you have, how many mentors do you have?
Too many. And I have an executive coach, which is who I talk to like most often related to like business.
Okay. Do you have a therapist?
I do have a therapist. Shout out to Dr. Shine.
Yeah. How often do you go to your therapist?
So we used to be popping like every week. Then we were every other week. Now we do like once a month. We'll check in.
Okay.
Or once every other month.
When you were seeing your therapist, I don't want to call her or him. What is it?
Him.
Okay. When you were seeing him once a week, were you like, I desperately need to see you once a week, or
oh
was
yeah,
he like,
I was like, the life is in shambles, sir.
Yeah.
Let's talk every week. But what I would find is that after we talk, my anxiety would go down.
Yeah.
I would be in a better position in place. And then my husband and I, we also have a couples therapist who's a woman that we go to, that we just, sometimes we be just in there laughing, you know.
Did you choose this female therapist?
I did, but I knew her previously.
Okay.
So we were actually with another like premarital counseling person, and we're just like, it ain't really vibing. You know, we were recommended to that person. Neither one of us knew her. And then the next person, I was like, I know this other woman who I had met like a long time ago. And I was like, I think we should go to her, like switch to her.
What makes it good therapy for you?
To me, I want feedback.
Yeah.
Like, I felt like the previous therapist, she was more like truly like listening. And she's like, oh, well, what do you think? What do you think? And I get that. But I want to know. I want to know what you think.
What do you think? What am I paying you for?
And exactly. And so, you know, my therapist, both my therapists, like they give me like, if they feel, they call you out on stuff, right?
Okay,
like,
so you have a lot of aha moments.
Exactly. And so I need that. We need that engagement.
Yeah.
You know?
It's so funny. I remember before we got married, well, our engagement was way shorter than y'all. We got engaged in October and we were married in November. Until like the day after we got married, I'm like sitting there sleeping, and then Ross was like, hey, Social Security office opens at like 6 a.m. You should go and try to get your name changed.
Yes. See, he sound like Austin, because Austin was like,
when you gonna get your name changed?
Right. We were going we got to go get our marriage certificate. We got to, like,
yeah.
He was running a tight ship on that.
Oh yeah, for sure. He definitely was. But I remember seeing this. It was like a spiritual therapist. It was like a guy in a church, and he had us doing like these worksheets and stuff to figure out our love language. And I'm like, I've known Ross since I was 8, okay? And I've also dated him for 2 years. I know his love language. Why are we doing this?
Right.
And even though it changed over time, I'm like, that was our first and last attempt at couples therapy. Now we just go to our own therapist and probably talk crap about each other. But so yeah, that's good to know. I think too, for you guys to already have that in place, I think it's good to build like a long lasting, very healthy marriage. So your girlfriends, I want to know, cause you have a big group of friends.
Yeah, I have like a group of friends, and I have like my close knit friends.
Your core group.
Yeah.
I was watching this thing with Oprah and Michelle Obama. And Michelle Obama is like, you know, she has a kitchen table, and her kitchen table are like her closest friends. There's about 12 of them that she feels safe with. And they were making this joke about, you know, Oprah invited Michelle over to her house, and she's like, yeah, bring your closest friends. And she's like, how many people is it? And then Michelle Obama was like, 12. And Oprah was like, girl, you do not have 12 friends.
I was about to say that. Oprah was like, 12 close friends.
And Oprah was like, well, I got a gal. And that's it. But I see from, you know, obviously from the outside looking in, that you have a kitchen table.
Yes.
And so what do those girlfriends mean to you, especially now while you're married? How do they fit into this now married equation?
So first I would say like they're all like just super supportive of me and like really happy for me, and I think that's like the starting factor. I used to know people who felt that once they got married they could no longer actually be friends with single women. And I just thought that was so crazy. And I was like, I wonder if that's gonna happen when
Well, it depends on who your single friends are.
Well, yeah, so I never had no wild single friends, so I guess maybe, you know, I agree. If your single friends are like crazy, very single, and they dragging you along to do some crazy stuff. Right? Yes. But my single friends go to bed by 10. You know,
okay, they're very responsible.
They like day parties and, you know, day drinking, and they go take naps and they go do their jobs on Monday. You know, like we have very grown friends. Who are not about the craziness.
When you first bought Austin around, were they like, are you serious?
No, they liked him. They were like, oh, okay, yeah, we like him. He's cool.
Okay.
Right?
I love that. Okay, so we are moving into the latter part of this, and I want to know, for you, what does a legacy look like for you?
So I think that a lot of my journey has been about leaving and creating a legacy, right? It's the reason why I started endowment in the name of in honor of my mother, right, at LSU, where I went to undergrad. I think about what legacy looks like for me today related to even some of the moves I make with the company, or how I'm now thinking about this journey and in my life as like a family, you know, woman, and what that looks like. But really trying to design a life where I can leave generational like wealth, and how I can pass generational like knowledge and information down. Because one day I'll be like one of the the elders, right, of the group. And so I think that's how I look at legacy. It's like not only what I can pass down to my family, but also what I pass down to my community as well.
And family meaning not just if you decide or if you don't decide to become a mom, that you'll leave stuff for your nieces and your nephews or your cousins.
Yes. And even with like giving a scholarship to other kids who came from where I came from, right? And so, you know, I would love to rebuild or build a new library in my hometown, like stuff like that. I think about from a standpoint of like legacy.
Would you name it after you?
I would name it after my mother for sure. Oh
my gosh. Did your mom like to read a lot?
So she did, but also I remember being raised in a rural area where getting to the library wasn't actually that easy. Right? And so we would go, and that would be the only place that would be computers, very dated computers, and books and things of that nature. But it makes me think about today how oftentimes we're fixated on issues in urban communities, right, with like crime, et cetera. But no one ever thinks about how hard rural communities also have it, and how hard it is to access things. No transportation, raggedy library, right, with books that are 10, 15 years old. And so I think there's a balance that needs to take place there. And I grew up in a more rural area.
That is so interesting that you say that, because we were just talking about this on the episode right before you with Dr. Lakeitha.
Oh, yes.
When she grew up in New Orleans, but then when Katrina happened, she was in the middle of, and I can't even tell you the name of this small town. It was literally like a map stain. And so I was like, where did y'all get books from? Like, because you know, and you're right, we do talk about the problems in the urban communities and public schools suffering, but then when you think about like schools in like these very rural country towns, it's like, this is why you have people like you who are first-time college students.
Right, because people never leave.
And people never even know that they can leave.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because they've never been anywhere.
Yeah.
Right. And so I often think about like rural areas and how I can, particularly where I came from, support kids and others who are from those type of places.
Yeah, don't sleep on Hammond though, because y'all up and coming.
We are. Hammond
is starting to look a little bit like Covington, Mandeville.
You're absolutely right. Like, yeah. So I go back sometimes, I'm like, where is this place?
Where was this big mall when I was living here?
There was not even a red light. So there was it's kind of like a little outlet now. But then we also had Southeastern, which at the time was like one of the fastest growing universities. Yeah. It had like 17,000 people, I think.
Did you know that you were wearing Southeastern's colors today?
You know what? I did not, but I sure am. See?
Yeah.
I'm from Hammond. Y'all try to say that I try to claim New Orleans, but I don't.
I'm
from Hammond.
People try to make you claim New Orleans.
They want
yeah,
me.
people are always like,
you're from
Louisiana. You're from New Orleans, Louisiana.
Yeah.
So I just want to say congratulations.
Thank you.
For all of the success that you have occurred over the years, for your new marriage. I think that is amazing. But also thank you.
Thank you.
For how often you reach back and to help other women, and not even women, just anybody who want to know what it is that you have to offer. How did you build the things that you built? And you so freely share these things. So thank you for that.
Yeah, I'm going to try to keep it going, pay it forward.
Yes, and thank you for inviting me into your lovely home. My new surrogate home in New Orleans.
Yes, thank you for being with us.
So last thing I would like for you to do is, when you think about young Sevetra, what are some things that you would tell her now that you didn't hear when you were growing up?
I would tell her that the world is really your oyster. There's so many other places outside of not only where you're from, but also places that you never even imagined beyond the things that you've read. And I would also tell her that ensure that you put the right people around you, that you know what like comfort and support looks like, so that you also realize what they don't look like as well.
And so for women who are aspiring to do the things that you were doing, but are feeling like a total imposter in that space, what is some advice that you have for them?
So I would tell those women that, first and foremost, if you have an idea, if you have goals in life, you have to not only stay the path, but you have to ensure that you have the right resources around you. And if you feel like you don't know anyone, you feel like you don't have mentorship, go out and in a genuine way, connect with people, have conversations with people, and don't do it because you need something from them. Do it because you genuinely want to get to know them. You genuinely feel like not only you have something to offer, but they also have something to offer, and that you can create genuine networks and relationships that will ultimately help you get to the next level.
Yes. Did you hear that? Yay! I'm so excited. Okay, so thank y'all so much for tuning in. If this was your first time here, thank you, and I hope that you come back to see us. Thank you again, Sevetra.
Thank you.
And we will see y'all next time.
Thank you.
Bye.